Welcome to our monthly Ask Me Anything. This is an opportunity for folks who are new in our Facebook community here at Raising Our Resilience Parent Group to ask questions. And we, really pulled these topics from what has been hardest for you lately. And so listen up for things that you can relate to, that really speak to you. And I'll do my best today to give you some pointers on like what you could focus on next that will hopefully have the biggest impact in making a change that you want to see. Whether that's having a calmer start of your day, whether that's seeing your child be more resilient in the face of challenges, or something else. So welcome. So glad you're here. And we'll get us rolling. Now, I let folks know who asked these questions that I'm going to be addressing them today. But I'll also be dropping it into the comments, the questions, and hopefully being able to tag some folks so they can find these posts and find their spot. So we're starting off with Catherine Mockler-Kane. Oh, by the way, drop your question in the chat as well if you have a different one or want to share a takeaway or something that really stood out to you. It helps us to all learn together in an active way. So please do that as well. All right, so Catherine says she has a 7, 5, and 2-year-old, and she wants to know how she can shift her child's defiance or children's defiance and lack of respect so that they can manage their emotions in a healthier way. Well, what I'm gleaning from this, Catherine, is that part of what you're understanding is that the reason why there's defiance and a lack of respect is connected to how they're managing their emotions. So let's just normalize right away that at 2, 5, and 7, kids still have a lot of limited life experience, and they don't quite understand yet how things like power and attention and influence really work. And so oftentimes defiance and a lack of respect is coming from that limited life experience. They don't really have a perspective on why things are the way they are. And they also have a limited ability to regulate their emotions. They're still really learning that, just like they had to learn how to walk and how your 2-year-old is still learning how to talk. Your 5-year-old is learning how to read, and your 7-year-old is learning how to maybe write essays. It's all part of what they need to learn. And so some things you can do to shift defiance and lack of respect is, first of all, make sure that you're not giving them immediately something to push back on. When I walk into workshops and seminars and I'm the presenter and we're about halfway through the workshop, I always have someone volunteer. And I say, can you just put up your hand like this? Would you be comfortable with that? So yes. Is it okay if I touch your hand? Yes. I just walk up silently, put my hand on their hand like this, and I just start to push. And usually one of two things happens. The first thing that can happen, which is rare, but it does happen, is they kind of look at me like this. So imagine my hand's coming at them, look at me like this, and they recoil their hand and they don't feel very safe anymore. They're confused, they feel suspicious, they don't understand what's happening. That's one way that folks can react. Another way that folks tend to react is they just push back equally to maintain the power dynamic, or in other words, the tension. They maintain the tension, and sometimes occasionally they'll even try to push harder than I'm pushing to establish that they're not going to get pushed around. Well, children are similar. If we come up to them and we start pushing, they tend to, as a knee-jerk reaction, push back. So when I hear the word defiance and disrespect, I often wonder, is there a way that we can win cooperation rather than giving kids something that they can immediately, as almost a knee-jerk reaction, a reflex, push from them outside of the moment in a way that feels collaborative, right? So it's less for them to push back on when someone is not coming to them and saying, you need to do it this way, or this is how it's done, right? You're giving them less to push back on. So really taking a more collaborative approach of winning their cooperation, and you can follow a few steps. So the first step I would say, and this is something that I teach all my clients, and when I do motivation workshops, this is sort of that key that unlocks the motivation, and we can go deeper with this, but the surface, right, the quick thing that you can try is really get into their world. In other words, take a moment, even if it's just 10 seconds, to really tune into what is it that my child is doing? What are they actually putting their attention on? What do they care about right now? And connect with that. Get into their world a little bit. Maybe see the world, see this situation or this moment from their eyes. Like, I'm really enjoying playing right now. This toy is so much fun. Or I'm really struggling because I can't find my shoes. You really tune in with them and get into their world. And then let them know that you understand that, like, show that you're in their world with them, show some understanding, like, oh yeah, I wish we could stop time and you could have all the playtime you want this morning, for example. Or gosh darn these shoes, why do they always, lose themselves, make a joke or something. Help them to see that you're in there with them. And then you can share a real thought, feeling, or perception of like, oh shoot, you know what I see? Sorry to tell you, but we are actually running a little behind this morning. We got to get, get going here. Or like, oh yeah, sometimes it's just, we just have to kind of bring the shoes to the car and put them on in the car. I know it's not ideal, but this is something that sometimes we just need to do. Or you can say like, I struggle too sometimes with time management, and it's frustrating, as I'll get it, like so frustrating. And I get it, and I wish that I was better at time management too. Maybe we could figure out a better way to approach our morning schedule together. So you're just shifting the conversation to this more collaborative place where instead of push, it's sort of side by side. Like, let's look at this together. Like, I'm with you here. I'm looking at this. I'm even literally I will literally go shoulder to shoulder with a kid at their level, same eye level, looking at what they're looking at, so they can really understand that I'm taking the time to see things from their perspective and connect and be side by side instead of head to head. So those are some things to consider. And I know you asked more about emotional regulation, but I want to just, let me know, put a comment in the chat or the in the comments. Just say the word yes if you can see how that might diffuse the big emotions in the first place, where you're no longer their adversary, you're their ally. So just put yes if that makes sense. So I'm all about smart, proactive strategies. Let's get ahead of the big emotions as one of the main ways that we approach big emotions. But we also need to be able to regulate in the moment. And you're not alone, Catherine. There's some other folks who have questions about like, well, how do I actually regulate in the moment? Oh, great. Okay. So we've got, let's see, Lucia's here. She says, yes, it does make sense. Awesome. And then it looks like someone is trying to connect, but isn't getting in. Oh, she needs the other Zoom link. Okay, I'll get it for her. All right. So another question we have is, how do I, let's see, my children are getting to be older now, and I find myself struggling to let go of parenting habits and limits from when they were younger. How do I effectively adapt my parenting style to better suit my children's ages and allow them to grow as individuals? Oh, this is from Nitu. Nitu, this is such a good question. And I'm just checking out here to see, it looks like you have adult kids now, and we have several folks. Deanna comes to mind, Sabrina comes to mind, who are in the group, in the community, who are also raising, adult kids. I myself have a 23 and 26-year-old stepchildren, so I feel you on this. And anybody who feels like they could level up their parenting, like happens a lot at age 6 to 9, where your child, the things that worked in preschool and kindergarten are really not working as well in elementary. And the transition between preschool to elementary is not a whole lot different from the transition from elementary to middle, and then middle to high school, and then high school beyond, right? Like Nitu's kids. So I can address it. So listen on all levels, right? No matter what age your child is, I want you to really think about how you might need to be catching up with your child's developmental plane as I give Nitu some advice. So, oh, great. So Lucia says she made it today and she's so happy about it. She rewatched the videos from last week's and she's all caught up. Good job, Lucia. That's awesome. So glad you're here. So with Nitu's question, how do we actually level up our parenting and let go of some of the old things? The first answer I'm going to give you is kind of obvious, but it's sometimes just worth being said. Spend some quality time with your kid. And what I mean is where you're not managing things, especially not micromanaging. You're not trying to just get daily tasks done. You're not, trying to teach them anything or get them to understand anything. There's really literally an agendaless amount of time with your children. And I want you to practically interview them of like, what is going on in their lives? And once you get to hear like what's going on in their lives, how do they feel about all of those things? Their friendships, their romantic connections, their career choices, their perspective on politics right now. And it's the most important thing you can do is to ask a lot and listen more. It can reset the relationship with adult children in particular if we have no agenda. So it's called like, a non-directional dialogue is what I've heard it called in like the kind of the psych intervention side of things where you're trying to repair a relationship. Non-directional dialogue, really open, purely curious as if you're meeting a brand new person. And just ask more, like reflectively listen. Oh, so that was really stressful for you. Tell me more about that. Just anything you can do to get them talking. And I would do it in a way where they're kind of a captive audience, like you're driving somewhere for an hour, right? Or you're on a walk and you have to walk a whole loop. So you've got a whole 45 minutes together, and just really get them to open up. Because the most important thing you can do to shift your parenting with 20 and 20 plus is you've got to get it. You have to like get what they're up against, and you got to get what they're going through. You've got to get like what matters to them right now before you're going to be able to reach them in any way to influence or shape their choices and decisions. So hopefully that's helpful to you. Me too. And also I would say, what is it that you would like to, what is it that you would like them to know about being an adult? And kind of, because at this age, we can give a lot of unsolicited advice because we're concerned and we want to be involved and we want to make sure we're doing our job as a parent and everything. But like, what is like not the details of what you want them to know, but like, what's a bigger guiding idea? Because 20 to 20 plus, even 16 plus, they do better with broad strokes than with us getting involved in the tiny details, unless they're actually asking for that advice. So here's an example, guidance around using substances. It's like, well, with my daughter and my son, one thing we are always saying is like, well, one thing about altering your body chemistry when you're in your teenage years is that you're not fully developed yet. Your brain isn't done growing until you're like 27 or 28. And even then, continues to grow. You'll never really know what you would have turned out like if you alter your chemistry too much when you're still growing. And what a shame that would be. That had such a bigger impact than like, well, who are you spending time with? And are they a good influence? And, are you sure it's safe? And, just all those kinds of worries and concerns we can put on our children won't have as much impact as, these bigger ideas. And so that's similar for 6 to 9-year-olds, shifting from preschool, which I've had 15 years of experience with that sort of age group and that transition. We start asking them like, well, how do you think we should approach this? What are some solutions that you have? You start to collaborate with them and bring their thoughts to the table and let them try out problem solving rather than always giving them specific guidance of how things go. So it's similar. You see the parallels, right? For those of you with younger kids. I'm wondering also if, let's see, if Lucia, if you have a question, you want to pop a question in to the chat, into the comments. Since you're here live, that's part of the benefit of being here, is you get to have your own questions answered. I also wonder if there's anything that I just shared that stands out to you, something that you feel like really applies to your situation with the kids that are in your world. So Stephanie has another question while maybe Lucy is thinking about hers, or seeing if she has one. Stephanie Weiser. So Stephanie Weiser says, I have a 4 and a 6-year-old. How do I use discipline and rewards to set limits and expectations at this age? Well, I have a whole course on this. Of course, part of my year-long program. Why wouldn't it be? Makes sense, right? But I can give you my 1, 2, 3 today, and you can get started with this. Okay. Let's see. Oops. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So Stephanie, with 4 and 6, so rewards is a tough one. What I can tell you about rewards, if you're going to use them, is it can't be the end game. Okay. So you don't want to land into a place where kids are going to expect to be rewarded for everyday expectations. However, you can use rewards and sometimes consequences too, sometimes both side by side, to shape behavior into habits but then you very, very quickly want to graduate them from depending on that external, feedback to tuning into the internal experience of how good it feels to make the right decisions or make the right choices in terms of discipline in particular, right? So for an example is, saying, hey, sweetie, if you don't hit or kick or bite anyone, if I'm thinking maybe 4-year-old, right? For this whole week, and when I go, you put your hands down, then we can get some ice cream, right? And it's just kind of weird. Like, why am I rewarding this, aggressive, like somewhat aggressive behavior? But what you're doing is you're just letting them know that like it's significant enough for this child to, shift from using their hands and their teeth and their feet to, like getting some self-control of stopping themselves in the moment, that there's going to be this external reward. However, in the moment, you're not emphasizing, yay, now you get ice cream, because now they think, oh, I should, maybe I should get aggressive more often to get more ice cream, right? You don't want to reinforce that idea. Instead, it's like, oh, wow, I'm so proud of you. You noticed that you were getting upset and you stopped. That must feel really satisfying. Notice that I'm shifting from an external reward to more of an internal reward, right? That feeling of satisfaction, or maybe relational reward of like, my parent is proud of me and really sees me and sees my effort, So that's something to just put out there since you brought up rewards. The other thing that we often miss is getting super clear on what the expectations are in the first place. It's somewhere where I have every person who comes into my world who has this question around discipline and limits of like, are the expectations clear? I mean, are you sure they're clear? They're clear to you, but are they clear to your child? Like, do they know, do you and your child both know why the limit exists, or your children, in this case, your 4 and 6-year-olds? Do they know what the limit is, why it exists, and what happens if they do or they don't follow through on our expectation, right? Do they have that clarity? And part 2 to that is, do you and the other caregivers have a plan for how you're going to respond at different levels of being out of bounds, right? How are you going to respond when the limits are followed, when the expectations are met? How are you going to reinforce that behavior, right? Like, wow, you did a great job of putting your hands down, honey, instead of hitting, right? That would be a way. How are you going to respond when it's sort of in that middle gray zone of like, ooh, like this is kind of out of bounds, but maybe we can make an exception this time, or we can address it next time, before the next time. Which are ones that you might just let it go a little and just kind of make a note of, we're going to address this soon. And which are red, like in that zone of like, nope, this absolutely has a follow-up. We act swiftly here, we give feedback clearly, and the child should have crystal clarity that this is out of bounds and understand that something's going to happen if they cross that line. Having that level, that second stage where you get that level of clarity, of sort of like clarity around severity, and between you and the child and you and the other caregivers, is a game changer. And it's a process of called the zones of behavior that I walk all of my clients through who need it, because it just is that powerful. I've seen it do wonders. A child really deciding that it's no longer okay to act out at school, because they understand what happens when they cross that line. But also understanding some things that they might do in the meantime to manage their emotions. Like, yeah, they can stomp off, but they can't turn their head and swear at the teacher, but they can stomp away. And that's like their first, kind of okay for now. And then the best thing that we want is for them to just calm themselves, use their words, come up with a problem solving approach. And that's what we're guiding them towards, right? Yeah. So there's so much that can be done at age 4 and 6, and beyond, and before even, around this piece. So hopefully something stood out here that you could start with, and just really getting clear on those expectations is going to be crucial. I have, it's so great. I have Arlen here, one of my brand new big-hearted, smart clients who's joining the Raising Our Resilience world. So good to have you here, honey. If you have a question beyond the one I'm going to answer, let me know. Also, let me know what your takeaways are, and I'll be sharing them with folks as we go. So good to have you. Lucia has a sideline question. She says she wonders how the parents find the change of the education system from traditional to values-based education. Do you find that there are new demands on the parents to take on the responsibility to prepare children with regards to their values, attitudes, and behaviors? Because perhaps the schools expect this of you as parents. Okay, so this is a really great community question, Lucia. Awesome question. I can tell you what I've seen in the field from what folks have been telling me, and I highly recommend that you go after this session, go to the group and just create a new post, maybe with a little image of some kind that will help get some attention so you can really get to hear back from folks, because this is such a valuable conversation I would love to have in the group, in the Raising Our Resilience parent group. So please do repost it as well. What I've been seeing is that there is a larger emphasis on values in schools, but I think it's sort of shifted from this sort of more traditional idea of like, we need to instill the values of respect and, discipline, self-discipline and things like that, to more of like, how do we take good care of ourselves, each other, and the world? So that's a shift I've seen. So it's a little bit more sort of socially responsible or socially oriented. And then how do we also, in that taking care of ourselves, how do we also manage our emotions and kind of navigate growing up in the world as a human that has, a social and emotional side, not just an academic side. So I think it's a good thing. It's a good trend. I think there's a lot more that maybe school counselors have shaped this. Some SEL, social emotional literacy curriculum has, learning has come into the school system. And in that, I would say that some school environments have become much more proactive about collaborating with the parents and really partnering with parents, creating partnerships around what can be done at, like, sharing what's happening at school so they can use those same tools at home. And there's a whole range out there. I wouldn't say that it is a standard now, though, that schools are involving parents in a meaningful way. As a matter of fact, there's a huge need for parent support and collaboration and partnership that I'm seeing in the field, which is part of why I end up giving so many school workshops, is because there's a need for it, and I'm one of the providers out there. Yeah. And so if you, in the school that your children is going to right now, I would be curious to hear about how they're approaching the parent piece and how much is kind of being expected. And because I always say, like, expectation without support isn't really going to land very well or get you very far. And that's the same I think about with children, right? Lots of expectations, low support. Yeah, they might find their way, but or high support and low expectations, either one, it's throwing it off. And something I always like to inventory with parents when they come into my world is like, what models did you grow up with around that? And what models are your children interacting with in terms of their coaches and their teachers and their school system, and in from you around support and demand and the balance and the blending of the two. So Lucia, long answer to a short question, but I think this is nuanced and it's a really valuable one. So I'm glad you said you're going to start a post. Great. I'll chime in there too. And anyone else who's listening, please do as well. Such a good one. All right. Next question. Gosh, these are great. I just love it. So there's Meredith is saying that she has 4 children, ages 11, 8, 7, and 5. And she wants to know, how do I move from a place of reacting emotionally during challenging situations to taking a moment to collect myself and responding with level-headedness and openness to teach? Oh, so important. This is like the $1 million parenting question. I really think so, and that's why I teach the pause, the pause as the master skill, or like the mother skill of parenting. Being able to pause and what they say in terms of like just becoming an emotionally intelligent human. One of the most important things you can kind of infuse into the situation is that self-awareness that comes in the pause. And without practice, though, that self-awareness can turn quickly into guilt, into shame, into harshness, depending especially on how we were sort of raised around emotions, what stories we have that we carry over and default to around emotions. So this is a very powerful place to practice a lot of self-compassion and a lot of compassion towards your children. So some tips, and then I have a deeper invitation for Meredith and anyone else who's really interested in going further with us, including my clients. All go through a process with me around this. Is that having a key question that you insert into that moment, sort of a self-intervention, can be so helpful. One of my favorites, because I tend to get into that power struggle we were talking about earlier, the push, is, am I really picking a fight with a 4-year-old right now? Like, I just ask myself this question. And it's coming from a place of like, really? Like, are you real? Like, it's more like this. Are you really picking a fight with a 4-year-old right now? Are you really picking a fight like for Meredith with a 7-year-old right now? Is that what you're up to today? Because usually 7-year-olds will take it further than you will. Like, you're not going to probably yell expletives and throw your face in the mud and pound your fist on the floor. That's like, they're going to take it further. So might as well just, try to get side by side, or let this one go until you're ready to come to the situation where you're not actually picking a fight here, or engaging in the fight, right? Taking the bait. Another one that I've used with a client of mine, and I learned actually from a coach of mine, one of my mentors, and she goes, some people are they like dangle the rope in front of you to like pick it up, of like a tug of war rope. They're like, here's the rope, go grab on, and it's like they're poking you with a some trigger or push button you have, or maybe not even doing it on purpose, but there is this sort of this temptation to grab it and just engage because it's something you know really well, or it's really got you going, and there's something that's compelling about it. And it's just like, I just sort of like literally will put my hands down and or even put them behind my back and be like, nope, like this, like, I'm not picking up the rope. I'm not going to do it. So whatever it can be for you in the moment where you can kind of intervene, where you feel like, this is something I do with my clients too, is and I advise every parent to do, is like understand what the very basic dynamic is that's pulling you in. Name it and trouble it, like nuance it, trouble it, like challenge it. So, and sometimes it's also good to just have like a walk away strategy. It's like when you start to see it come up, you just walk away, let them know, say, be right back, walk away, and then use your coping tools. And that's where the deeper inquiry comes in. I have a 6-part series that I run twice a year. Next one's in early June, where I will take you through coping tools one by one, so you can get the somatic experience with them and really wrap your head around like which of them will work the best for you to become your go-tos. So it's just automatic. That's what we want for you. Find your go-tos, make them automatic, help your kids find their go-tos, and help them be automatic about taking, that step of coping into their own hands automatically. Like, they just know what works for them. Might be a breathing tool, might be a somatic tension release tool, it might be more of the mindset, might be humor. We'll find out together in our next series. Okay, hopefully that's helpful. Lucia likes the 6, take 6. She really likes that, 6 deep breaths. Ooh, yeah. And 6 is enough, 6 can get you there. Absolutely. And then there's some visualization breaths. Absolutely. Yeah. I love those. And that's part of what we teach during the 6-part series, is like, which of those visualization breaths is going to really stand out to you, for you and your child, that's going to land really well and be memorable enough so that when your brain is actually misfiring, right, the lid is off and it's not integrated anymore, your higher cognition, your emotional center, and your brainstem are not in sync, right? It's out of sync. That it's something that's so familiar to you and works so well that you can just go there. Yeah, you can just go there. Nice, Meredith. I know it's been a while since we've talked, so hopefully this is a nice refresher, and can help you make that next step in your progress that you want. So Annie Goddard has a question that's, how do I show support for my child in different ways and situations so that they know they can trust me with sharing their interests and their challenges? Annie, this is such a good like vulnerability and like relational resilience question. I love it. So I would say something that you might consider, and again, something I do with all my clients, is consider what their love languages might be, their top love languages, because the fact that you're asking this question kind of points to the possibility that you haven't quite stumbled upon it yet. Because one way that you can show support very powerfully is to figure out their top love language and speak it consistently to show interest in their interests, right? So here's an example. Let's say it's gifts. You are out of town for the weekend and you come back and you've noticed that your child is into dinosaurs, and you go out of your way to stop by the local toy store and get this dinosaur they've been looking for. You come home, you say, I've been thinking of you and look what I found, and you share it with them. It's like all the lights go off, right? Like all the pleasure centers, the reward circuitry, the relational oxytocin, right? Everything starts to pump. So really aligning those things, right? So their interests and their love language can be a powerful place to start. Another is ask, like I was saying before, to Nitu. Was it Nitu? Nitu, yes. Is really considering what it is that they need from you, because they may not need you to tell them much. They may need you to ask more questions and just be there as a presence and really listening and maybe actively reflecting back what you're hearing, those kinds of things. I know. Interesting. Let's see. And it looks like, Stephanie, this question looks like it's connected to, oh no, this is Annie's question. Okay. That makes more sense. Because Annie didn't really let me know what ages of kids she has, but I'm guessing that, you're considering like how to maybe even repair something here. So if there's been a chronic pattern of not connecting over interests, but instead, and that those vulnerable moments, but connecting more of like the tasks of life. Like I said to Nitu, like take a break from that, like show up and maybe have 3 sessions of quality time over the next week, where it's non-directional, like you don't have just chat with them, connect with them, join in activities with them, like really spend some quality time with them, and see if that lights up the connection and see if they can open up a little bit more to you. Another is to use literature and stories and even TV shows of their favorite characters, and having a chance to really talk about what the characters are experiencing, what choices they're making, and really show that you're somebody who's there for the hard stuff too. Like you can talk through hard things and reflect on tough topics. That can give them a lot of sense that you're a trustworthy thought partner. Like you're not just the fun person or just the get it done person, but you're actually there for a lot more. And then lastly, show up when it counts, just really show up, drop in to a calm, present state when you can, and just really listen and check in with them emotionally. Do your best not to react when they're being emotional. Do their best to be strong and guide them well. All these skills that we're all working on as parents. And the trust does build over time. It really does. But I would say if there's some kind of pattern to shake up, start there first in the love language. Okay, Annie, hopefully that was helpful. And anybody else who's here listening, let me know if there's something that stood out about that one that really helped you in the comments or the chat. I know we might still have Lucia and maybe and it looks like Arlen is still with us. Let us know what stood out to you. And then I have this one that is really, we've got Arlen on this question, as well as Andrea, Katie, and Jennifer. So it's a nice crew of folks who all said of the topics that they could get support with right now, the one that they really want most help with is on setting limits. And I hear you, it is not easy to set limits, mostly because it's not a simple process, right? We're talking about a lot of steps here, a lot of pieces, a lot of moving parts. One thing that can really help is that if you have another co-parent or caregiver, do the work of getting on the same page of why you have the limits you have. And it's the same steps I was explaining earlier about getting really clear about what they are, why they exist, and what happens when they are and are not followed. And you have that pregame and that game plan, which is what we do in our coaching sessions. It's what we do in our program. We talk through tools for how to even have these conversations that I can guarantee you that my parents never had these conversations. They just kind of winged it the whole time, for better or worse, mostly worse. That when you pregame together, just like you would if you were buying a house or if you were doing some other really important thing, right? Setting limits and disciplining is a huge undertaking. It's a big project. And you need to be organized about it to some level. And I know there's a lot of buzz out there like, oh, just love them and it's fine. But if there are ongoing patterns and struggles around limits and you end up going to the punitive side more than you'd like, or giving in more than you'd like, or one parent has a really strong reaction and the other one doesn't, like, you've got to get that in sync. So again, steps. What are the limits? Why do they exist? How do we respond when they're followed or not followed? And then you step into collaborating with the children about them, how making sure they understand why the limits exist, what they are, and what happens when they do and don't follow them, and even ask them what they think you should do. Honey, what do you think I should do when I've asked you 3 times to come to dinner and you ignore me? What do you think should happen next? Once you start involving the children, and that's also part of like maturing your approach, right? Because I think with preschoolers, you really feel like you have to already have all the answers, and you kind of do, especially for toddlers. Like, you need to know what the bounds are and how you're going to respond. Like, they're not going to be able to tell you, what I really need from you right now is to offer me a hug, but then tell me that I still need to do it. Like, they're not going to tell you that. Preschoolers, they start to be able to throw in some ideas and maybe be involved, create the chart together for the routine and say, I want to brush my teeth first and then get dressed, those kinds of things. But once you get to age like 5.5, 6 and up, they really do need to be a part of the process in order to feel like it's not something being done to them, but it's something that they get to be a part of creating, that side-by-side kind of collaboration. So I think that brings consistency, right? So getting clear on what it is, why it exists, what happens if, right, they follow or don't follow, what behavior you're actually seeking, what sort of you can let slide for now, what you're always going to address, which I alluded to earlier. And then getting the kid to be a part of the process where they're actually co-creating this sort of how we do, expectations and, routines and how we treat each other and how we communicate. It's amazing how much further you can go and how much more consistent things will be when all of that foundation is laid. Now, it sounds like a big project because it is. Like, in my year-long program, we dedicate 2 whole months to this. And oftentimes in coaching sessions, say a third of them are about this, especially if there's some out of bounds behavior going on and some disorganization or out of syncness between the caregivers. So such a crucial piece. I'm so glad you brought it to the surface and you pointed it like, that's the one that I want, because it really does make a huge difference. A lot of times when folks come to me and they say, hey, my kid is melting down, they have big emotions, we're getting into these power struggles, I'm getting upset, I'm having my own meltdowns and tantrums. I say, let's look at the routines and collaboratively with your child so they get on board, and let's look at the limits. And then let's also, of course, look at how we're handling those emotions and, getting more resilient with our emotions and making sense of them. And then there's a couple other pieces: motivation, conflict resolution, other skills that really, really support having less and less of these meltdowns, tantrums, and power struggles, and it works. So hopefully we've, covered some tips that you can dip into. There's always more road we can travel together, friends. I mean, that's why I've developed a year-long program. That's why I have, over 20 families working with me in that program right now. We've already have 5 families signed up for July. This cohort will fill up. And in May and June, we're going to be inviting folks to come in and really play with us and check out our famous webinar on navigating big emotions, our famous 3-step process. And also the 6 steps of finding your coping tools. And if that feels like it's a good fit and like and trust what's happening and you're having breakthroughs, you might even end up in our year-long program. It'd be exciting to have you in what's called the Family Foundations Immersion. But until then, I've got one more question to answer. And this is a big one. And I actually have a coach on my team that specializes in this. And so I'm going to borrow a few things from Coach Crystal Maher right now. She's one of the better ones at this. I continue to need to learn from her because it's not the center of my wheelhouse. So I'm just going to tag her in this so she also sees this post. So she's one of our coaches in the immersion. So powerful, has 2 young children, still finds time for her passions and things. So here's the question: how do I balance time with my child, friends and family, career, personal time, household responsibilities without feeling burnt out or guilty that I haven't done enough? Christine, this is the other $1 million question, right? The one that if we could just snap our fingers and solve it, oh my gosh, we'd have much more functional days and families, wouldn't we? Because I'm telling you, my goal, one of my secret missions, everybody, that's not so secret, is that if we can get things right between parents and children, then not only do we get the kids to a place where they're going to be better humans and adults going out into the world and making a better impact on hopefully saving humanity in the world, which we need more folks who are ready to do that and to even just weather the storms of reality. But we also will have parents who can get back to the good work they're meant to do, impacting lives or at least in their local communities in ways that is only possible when things are right at home, right? Because all of us can relate to having energy tied up in something out of balance at home, because it's part of the condition of parenting, especially parenting spirited children or children with differences or personality conflicts that can come up in families. So thank goodness we're doing the work, and it's just hats off to all of you who are in this group, the Raising Resilience parent group, or are working further with us, because you're tackling this question and you're going to free this energy. So that being said, one of the first things you can do is just size it down. So oftentimes we're like, oh, one day I'll get to finally go on that vacation, that surfing yoga trip I wanted to go on, or to, visit that rainforest where I am going to do my missionary work, or go to this, conference and really take that next step in my career. And it's big. And then we get depressed because it feels like so far-fetched. And then we let the dream or the goal fade. And so what Coach Crystal has always encouraged us to do is find 10 minutes. Find 10 minutes and do something that lights you up, that is just part of your passions, that really fills you up, and start there. Just start with 10 minutes. And if you're talking about balance, then 10 minutes with friends, 10 minutes with family, 10 minutes with career, maybe reading an article or something, or making that one networking contact that you've always been meaning to reach out to, or whatever it looks like, right? Create one more post if you're marketing online or whatever it is. 10 minutes to declutter that corner, 10 minutes to do something that really lights you up, like play 2 songs and have a dance party. Yes, that was a lot of 10 minutes. It's about an hour, but sprinkled out across a week, let's say, just so it's easy, one thing a day, you do start to get out of your ruts, right? And you start to feel more like the driver than the passenger in your life journey. It's worth it. And I challenge you, Christine, and anyone else who wants it, to try it for a week and come back and let us know how it goes. Just the 10-minute rule. Start with the 10-minute rule. James Clear, by the way, of Atomic Habits, would say if it's a habit you want to establish, which is just a little different than the balance question, start with 2 minutes. One of his famous examples is he had this client that he was working with and was really studying with him. And he said he wanted to establish that he is a person who exercises. He used the identity hack. I am a healthy person who goes to the gym, but he wasn't doing it. And it was because in his mind, a gym session was 2 to 3 hours, and he couldn't find the time, or didn't know how to find the time. But then after he worked with James Clear and started working with Atomic Habits, he just decided that 5 minutes was enough. And so he would literally, for a couple of weeks, drive to the gym, go into the gym, do one activity, and then leave. But then he started to identify with, I'm somebody who goes to the gym. I go to the gym, right? That wasn't his end game, but it was his beginning. And then he started going to the gym longer and longer. And pretty soon it was just part of his weekly routine. He needed to start small. He needed to start with that first 2 to 5 minute step. So I would say whatever it is that you feel like is out of balance, like getting neglected, right, off the scales, build in 2 to 10 minutes for that thing consistently over time and watch it grow. All right. We nailed it, friends. Good job. We did it under the hour. Any last questions or reflections, please do add them into the chat, or, Arlen says, without arguing to the bitter end. Yes. Okay. Right. Like letting go, that to me, that's the tug of war rope, right? Like you're holding on and then your muscles are tired and your back hurts and your shoes are all muddy, but you're still pulling, and then you're yelling insults to cross the line, right? And saying you'll always something, or you'll never this, or you all, yeah, to that bitter end. And like, what happens if you, first of all, didn't pick up the rope in the first place, or you picked it up and you're like, I don't know, we're not doing this today. Actually, I'm going to get side by side, or I'm going to go cool off and come back when I can be side by side with this person who's upset. Good work, everybody. Well done. Let me know what you got out of this in the chat and comments, and let each other know. Lucia says, this is awesome. The Atomic Habits. She loves it. You're welcome, Lucia. So good to have you here. Get to know you today. So fun. Yeah, and Lucia, DM me if you want to have a follow-up chat. I would love to go further with you and take you through a little process of called a strategy session, where we kind of see what areas between like the routines and the conflicts and the limits and motivation and emotions, like what, if you could get on the other side of it, would have the biggest impact in your life right now. And I can take you through my process. We take a quiz, we meet and go over the quiz, and we identify a few areas and get you some hot tips of how to go forward. And then sometimes it turns out it's also a good fit for us to work together, or for you to hop into one of my programs, and we can explore that, but there's no obligation. So I have some spots open on my calendar for those kinds of sessions. Arlen and I just had one recently, and it was very impactful, so much so that she hopped into a year-long program. So yeah, but either way it goes, it's a gift that I give to folks who come into the community. So that's available to you, Lucia. If you'd like to hear more, just send me a little message and I'll get that resource to you. All right, everybody, lots of love. See you next week. We are going to have, I'm just going to double check the schedule here. I believe we are going to have another session next week. Let me double check. Yes. Oh, wow. Next week's a good one. So we're going to go over 10 ways to use a feelings chart, because we're going to do a little longer form training on that. And then we'll have a chance to sort of review that over the next few weeks. And so May is going to be really good for increasing emotional literacy. And then we also have a webinar coming up that's really exciting, where I'm going to absolutely give you 3 ways to boost your child's emotional intelligence. It's like a deeper form of some of the things we've been going over in the Facebook group this past month. So if you've liked the themes of what we've been studying, this would be a good time to check that out. Let me see if I can just go ahead and pull up the link for that so everybody has access to it. Here it is. Yes. So this is on Eventbrite. You can just register for it, and it's hosted by Jovial. Jovial is a software company that has given away free software to co-op preschools and is networked with over 200 co-op preschools. And they also host events, and they've hosted me as a speaker this year. This is our third collaboration, and just such a fun event. I think you'll just really like the webinar process that I have. This is one to share with friends as well, because it's free. It's by donation, but yeah, whatever you can afford. And just a really good time with some other parents who are maybe struggling with similar things. And it's for all ages. So yeah, please feel free to join us. It's going to be a really good session. 3 essential ways to boost emotional intelligence in young children. It is all ages, but of course, preferencing towards the younger children, like ages 2 to 10. All right, you all. Lots of love to you all, and I'll see you next time. Okay. All right. See you. And best of luck. Let me know how it goes, and we'll see you next Monday at noon or on that webinar in a couple weeks. Okay. All right. Till next time.